Willie D Live.
What's up, family? As the United States desperately tries to bring a close to the war in Iran, a Marine vet is calling out Donald Trump, your president, and the dangerous truth behind his Hormuz Strait crisis. We'll get into that in a moment. I'll let you check out what he said. But first, let's check out this video on CNN.
State television is reporting that according to a draft memo, the U.S. will end its blockade of Iran's ports. And in return, Iran will restore the number of commercial ships transiting through the Strait of Hormuz to pre-war levels soon. CNN's Oren Lieberman joins us now from Jerusalem with the latest. Oren, what are you learning about this draft memo being reported on Iranian state television?
Linda, this is our first sense of what's in the memorandum of understanding that's being worked on between the U.S. and Iran to try to get to a ceasefire agreement. It is important to note that this information comes from Iranian state television, so we don't yet have confirmation of this from the U.S. side. And crucially, even Iranian state television says this isn't finalized yet. But it does include a lot of what the U.S. is looking for in terms of the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state television says the memorandum of understanding, or MOU, calls for the U.S. to lift its blockade of Iranian ports and for U.S. military forces to withdraw from the vicinity of Iran, and in exchange, Iran would open the Strait of Hormuz and ensure that traffic through the crucial waterway is back to pre-war levels within 1 month. All that according to Iranian state television. Now, that's not it. In terms of monitoring the flow of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, through which some 1/5 of the world's water flows, through which 1/5 of the world's crude oil flows, it would be up to Iran working with Oman to monitor and control that traffic, according to Iranian state television. That in and of itself may be unacceptable to the U.S. because that, in a way, leaves the Strait of Hormuz under partial Iranian sovereignty, and that, of course, has been a red line for the U.S. Now, Iranian state TV says this is still in the works, it's still being negotiated, and it's not finalized, but Pakistan is mediating between the U.S. and Iran to try to get to some sort of agreement here. Now, there's a lot we don't know here. According to Iranian state television, it calls for the U.S. to withdraw forces from the vicinity of Iran. What exactly does that mean? Iran has called for the U.S. to withdraw forces from the broader Middle East. I think that's clearly not going to happen, so a lot depends on how Iran defines its vicinity and whether the U.S. would even see it as acceptable that Iran and Oman are left monitoring and controlling traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. But this is a look at the MOU that's in the works here to try to get to a broader ceasefire agreement to end this war and to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Linda, we have seen a trickle of traffic flowing through the strait. I believe there were about 24 ships, or 25 ships that went through yesterday. That's still a fraction of pre-war traffic.
And Oren, we know that the U.S. president is set to host a cabinet meeting discussing Iran in the country.
All right, fam, I just wanted to bring y'all up to speed on the negotiations. I trust Iranian state TV way more than I trust U.S. media outlets. I mean, way more. Because we know for a fact that every single time we've ever went to war with anybody, deception was already on the table. They always deceived us. They always lied to us, told us the war was about one thing when it was about something else. They never tell us the truth because the truth is going to cost them moral equity, right? Yeah. And they don't want to have to deal with that. They don't want to have to try to explain that because they want to make everybody think that the United States is the world's moral compass. And we know that damn sure ain't true because we're right here. We see it every day. Now, let's get into this veteran right here. This is John Keefer. Man, this dude right here is the truth. He is the truth. So he wrote an article in Alternet, and he got down on Trump, man. He straight up called him out. He said what it was. He gave us some insight into what people who actually served, Marines who have actually served in war, what they think about this whole thing. And so check this out, man. Marine Vet calls on Americans to resist Trump's incompetence. Look at him, saluting to a flag, to a country he wouldn't even fight for. But he go and start a war and send your children to war. He'll send you to war. But he wants you to fight for a country he wouldn't fight for. Ain't that something? A country that he has arguably gotten the most from in the past year and a half or so. Actually, his whole life, because his whole life has been based on inheritance. He ain't really worked for nothing except to be a horrible human being. Yeah, fam. So here we go. According to John Keefer, who served and was injured as an infantry platoon commander during the Vietnam War, it has been a difficult year to hold his usual Memorial Day remembrance due to what he calls President Trump's reckless misuse of the military. As the Trump administration slashes Department of Veteran Affairs services and fires principled military leaders, we are seeing it commit the same mistakes and incompetence that got us deployed in forever wars, going back to Vietnam, writes Keefer in the San Francisco Chronicle. Trump, who famously avoided military service in Vietnam thanks to 5 deferments, has started a war in Iran without input from Congress or serious public discussion. And it's clear, he didn't plan for the inevitable backlash. It is a war of choice with no clear objective, no carefully mapped out strategy, and an ever-shifting exit plan. As almost every veteran knows, war should always be the last result, not the first. This war, says Keefer, was launched with a confusing lack of foresight. For example, Trump did not seem to comprehend the likelihood of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, even though it was the likely outcome suggested by his top advisors. What's more, Trump's actions have killed thousands, including a strike on a girls' school that killed over 100 students, which makes little sense given that Trump's initial justification for launching the war was to help the people of Iran. All of this, says Keefer, is part of a larger pattern of military abuse. Since early last year, he explains, Trump has expanded military operations abroad without meaningful congressional oversight or public debate. He has approved bombings in Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Nigeria, Iran, Venezuela, the Caribbean, and the Eastern Pacific. He has used the military in American cities to deal with emergencies that don't exist. He tries to politicize our military to fight battles against Americans whom he calls the enemy within. He told a gathering of high-ranked officers at the Quantico Marine Corps base, we should use some of these dangerous cities, specifically Democratic-run ones, as training grounds for our military. Keefer says, this all feeds into Trump's attempt to put himself above the law, an effort, Keefer says, Americans must and can resist. I have faith in the will of the American people to push back against autocrats, he asserts. The resistance in Minneapolis to Trump's deployment of immigration agents is a good example. We should all insist that Congress reclaim its power over the use of force domestically and in war abroad, support state and local leaders who stand up to Trump, and urge military to stay loyal to the Constitution by refusing illegal orders. I ain't got no problem with that. Say, fam, we stuck. We're in a bad position. Like, you literally let a 5-year-old run the country. Here's what I want to know, fam. Can anybody tell me? Damn, I sound like Shula King. But can anybody tell me where this dude get the time to hop on his failed Truth Social network every day, I'm talking about in the middle of the night, wee hours, and peck away talking about his enemies. Well, he don't do the typing, he dictate, because everybody know dude can't spell. He can barely talk. But where does he find the time to do all of that? And a bigger question is, why is he doing all of that? Why? Like, dude, you're the president of the United States. You won. You got the most coveted office in the land. You won. Why do you talk like such a loser all day? Just talking about people who you should be above. I mean, you should be looking forward. You passed up Barack. You passed up Biden. Why do you talk about these people all day, every day? You passed them up. You won. You got 34 felonies. You never spent a day in jail. You won, bro. You was born rich. You won, bro. You won. You in the circus. You had a private plane donated to you by a foreign country. Something that was supposed to be illegal, but you did it anyway. You accepted. You won. You invaded a country. You invaded a sovereign nation. You kidnapped their president, gave his wife a black eye, stole all their oil, sold it, put the proceeds in a foreign bank account that you control. You won. I do not understand it. Perhaps you can help me out, fam. Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. No more talk.